Brothers and sisters of the sacred junk, welcome to the burning hand of friendship, a channel devoted to the relics of pop culture that scrambled our brains and the physical media that built the mythos of a new age. I'm your host, Friendo Number One, and I'll be guiding you through this sacred box of junk scrolls. But before we dive in, let me be clear, this channel isn't just about comics. They are a thread in a much weirder, tangled web of media and memory, and in future episodes, we'll explore the worlds of vinyl records, CDs, cassettes, VHS, and its kid brothers DVD and Blu-ray, haunted toys and tchotchkes. We'll even get into some paperback gold. Seriously, kids, crack a book open once in a while. But mostly, we venerate the sacred objects from half-remembered childhoods, the badges of rebellious adolescence, and the nostalgic totems of obsessive adults, like myself. But on today's episode, our very first episode, we have a comic book haul. But that's just the doorway, the ritual. And I recently filled a short box for 60 clams at my local comic book shop. You see, this isn't just a comic book haul, it's an initiation. I offer you the burning hand of friendship. Right out the gate, we're coming in hot with Roy Thomas and Mike Mignola adapting Francis Ford Coppola's adaptation of Dracula back in 1992. And I've got complicated feelings about the movie, but I absolutely love this. This is Mignola right before Hellboy, and he is fully locked into the gothic vibes. And this also flew under my radar back in the day, probably because I was a bit of a comic snob at the time, and I just couldn't imagine Topps, the Garbage Pail Kids and baseball card people putting out any comic worthwhile. Boy, was I wrong. Ted McKeever's Plastic Forks, number 1. And this definitely blew my 16-year-old mind back in the day. This is definitely one of the weirder comics I got into, released on the Epic imprint, which was Marvel's mature imprint, just like Vertigo was that for DC, which coincidentally Ted did go to Vertigo and write a couple of stories there. But this one's one of my favorites. It's just absurd. It's like David Lynch and David Cronenberg dropping acid and then storyboarding the worst dystopian nightmare with a Sharpie. But I love it. J.N. Williamson's Masks, an anthology of elegant evil. And I got it mostly because I saw Tim Vigil's name from Faust and Mark Evans from Hellraiser, and the Boris Vallejo cover didn't hurt. But I also love this type of style, this oil on panel or charcoal in panel or colored pencils, whatever. There's Tim Vigil. But anyways, Innovation Comics for me, they were always, found at the dollar bin. And sometimes you were pleasantly surprised and just had a good feeling about this one. Even though Tim Vigil only has like 2 pages. I stuck around for like this type of style. I think it's unique, airbrush, whatever. I think it's cool. Dork, number 9, 2001, slave labor graphics, and created by Evan Dorkin. So I considered myself a fan of Evan Dorkin back in the college days, especially Milk and Cheese and Space Ghost Coast to Coast. I even had a few early issues of Dork and really enjoyed the self-loathing nerd stories, and yeah, I guess I could relate. But after the whole Ed Piscor tragedy and the way Evan responded on social media, it kind of left me with complicated feelings. I mean, there's no hate. They obviously shared similar influences that I resonate with. But Evan, you could have done better, man. The New Croft Super Show, number 6, 1978. And hello, Magic Mongo, old friend. And this is basically a TV tie-in for a television show that I would watch when I was 3 years old. And I was kind of obsessed with it. It had a wild cast of characters. It was a Sid and Marty Krofft production. It had Wild Boy and his BFF Bigfoot. And Bigfoot was like a big deal in the 70s. He even had an action figure because he was in the $6 Million Man. And, oh, wait, this is Captain Cool and the Kongs, fictitious rock band. And yet some teenagers with a talking dune buggy called Wonderbug. Not to be confused with another group of teenagers and another talking dune buggy called Speed Buggy from Hanna-Barbera. Phantom Star Killer #1 2020 variant cover. Probably the newest comic I picked up at the dollar bin. I only know about the Killer Bootleg Super 7 action figure. Didn't know he had his own comic, so I'm looking forward to reading this. I like the design. I think it's neat. The Ballad of Halo Jones by Alan Moore and Ian Gibson. So these were originally published by 2000 AD in the UK, and then Quality Comics reprinted them here in the US, and I believe added the color because I think they were originally in black and white. But I've never read Halo Jones. I've read plenty Alan Moore, but I've never read this. Have been wanting to pick up the collected edition, and I've never seen single issues like this out in the wild. I'm not too happy that it's on Quality Comics. I wish it was an Eagle reprint because I really hate the covers. They're just unappealing, not really hideous, but not really pretty. And speaking of Eagle Comics, I grabbed a couple of these Rogue Troopers reprinted by Quality, but this is right when they took over the 2000 AD license from Eagle Comics, and it looks like they were still using the same pressing formats, meaning the same paper and the superior cover pages, unlike the issues of Halo Jones. But I've never read these, have always been curious, have only played the video game, so I'm looking forward. Judge Dredd 46 and 48, published by Fleetway Quality back in 1990. And to add more confusion to the 2000 AD reprint saga, Fleetway, who was the original publisher of 2000 AD in the UK, absorbed Quality Comics and continued reprinting its own titles here in the US. But that did not last long, as there were only a few more issues of Judge Dredd after that. And as you can see, they kept the same format, same paper, and unattractive covers. But it's all about what's inside, and I really love Judge Dredd. But just to show a contrast, I also found Judge Dredd 30 and 34, and issue 34 lands right when Quality took over the license, but they were still using Eagle Comics layout and format. Same thing you see with those Rogue Trooper books, meaning the cover art was still top tier, and in this case we got Brian Boland's. But even the paper felt a little more satisfying. But to be clear, the stories reprinted on Quality are great. I don't want to dissuade anyone. If you see a Judge Dredd issue, even if it has an ugly cover, pick it up. And shout out to Anthrax, because their track I Am the Law, it's what introduced me to Dredd back when I was 15. Yummy Fur number 18 by Chester Brown, published by Drawn and Quarterly 1989. An indie comic classic. I actually have the little graphic novel that has the full story of Ed the Happy Clown, which is one of the chapters in this book. But this is really weird stuff out there, grotesque, satirical, absurd. So if you're not into that, I would stay away. Twisted Tales number 5. Come on, look at that Richard Corbin cover. But anyways, this was published by Pacific Comics back in 1983. This was their horror anthology, kind of like an EC Comics Tales from the Crypt, but with the volume dialed up to 11. And to be honest with you, back in the day, I would never see Pacific Comics at my comic book store. I would only see them at the dollar bins when I would go to conventions, and I would always grab these Twisted Tales. But anyways, I get 3 full pages of Richard Corbin on this. So for me, it's an absolute win. Plus, we get the cool ass cover. The Vampire Lestat number 1, 1990. And of course, this is based on Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles, like Interview with a Vampire. And the adaptation was written by Randall Green with some striking paint on panel artwork by Derek Gross. I really dig the style and layout. It's bold, moody, and it fits the material perfectly, which, yeah, I've read. But let me preface that by saying, if you had a gothic girlfriend in the early 90s, there's a good chance you were required to read Anne Rice. So I was absolutely surprised I found the Max #1 in the dollar bin, and it's in great shape. This came out in 1993 on Image Comics, illustrated by Sam Keith and co-written by William Messner Loebs. I did love me some Sam Keith back in the day, and I had a full run of the Max, but I did sell the majority of my comics 10 years ago, and maybe that's why I'm back at it again, but I'm probably not going to rebuild the run and will wait for a deluxe collected edition if that ever happens. Also need to mention the MTV cartoon, definitely one of my favorites during the college era. Mark Baudet's Miami Mice #3, and look, Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, and Dave Sim all showing up in the next issue. God damn, I gotta find that. So I grew up in Miami during the 1980s, and I've always had a soft spot for Miami Vice, the TV show, which leads us to this ridiculous parody, and yeah, I know, the art is all over the place. But when I was a kid, I used to spot issues of this at a newsstand my dad would take me to, but they were in the back section behind the counter with the naughty magazines, so my dad probably thought there were boobs in this and just wouldn't buy it for me. But look at me now, old man, and guess what? No boobs. Doc Stern, Mr. Monster 3 through 6, published by Eclipse Comics in 1985 and 1986. And what's this? Basil Wolverton, what is he doing here? And I really like this rot stuff. I don't know what that is though. And there's Basil Wolverton. So he's one of my favorite Silver Golden Age artists. He did a lot of horror, sci-fi, and some humor. But I digress. This is about Doc Stern, Mr. Monster, someone I know very little about, other than he was a Canadian Golden Age superhero, and Michael T. Gilbert revamped him and gave us this. But I've never read a page, so I'm going in blind. I do know that Alan Moore does some co-writing in this issue, and it was a bonus to find these Basil reprints, so I can't wait to check all of them out, and hopefully they're all as fun. 1963, Book 1, Mystery Incorporated. Shamed by you, English? Anyways, this definitely fell under the radar for me back in 1993, because if I would have known that there was a book with Alan Moore, Rick Veitch, and Dave Gibbons, I would have totally jumped in. But I think at this time, the only Image title I was picking up was the Max, because everything else just seems so way over the top. And this is really just the Silver Age satire done the Alan Moore way. And, you know, he's a crazy ass wizard. So I'm glad I picked this up. I hope I could find the other issues for the same nice price. Quantum Leap #5, published by Innovation Comics in 1992. And I don't know what I was thinking when I grabbed this. Nostalgia definitely got the best of me, as I really liked the television show back in the day. So I was kind of curious, thought there was going to be more art like this, but should have skimmed the pages because I'm kind of unimpressed by the art. But the art is by Rob Davis, written by Terry Collins, and yeah, I knew what I was getting myself into. This is probably my least favorite pick. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #29, published by Mirage Studios in 1990, and this one was written and illustrated by A.C. Farley. And I used to have a run of the Turtles 1 through 35, but they were sold during the great comic purge of 2015. So I've been slowly grabbing issues if I come across them, even if they are a little beat up like this one. And I even picked up the compendiums, which I highly recommend. They are missing a few issues due to some copyright entanglements, but luckily I was able to find those physical copies, so I'm good. But either way, love the Mirage era, love to find them in the bins. Johnny Quest, published by Comico, written by William Messner Loebs. Moon Shoes, forgot about that. But these are based on the Hanna-Barbera cartoon from the 60s. And I was born in the mid-70s, and even then they were still running Johnny Quest cartoons in syndication. So I feel like I kind of grew up on the cartoon, never read the books, have always seen them in the dollar bin. But I never knew that William Messner Loebs wrote these, so I had to check them out. Plus, I had to grab this one with The Bill Sienkiewicz cover art, one of my favorite artists, so I'm looking forward to these. And speaking of favorite artists, we have David Mack's Kabuki, Circle of Blood, Acts 2 through 6 on Caliber Press, published back in 1994. Very happy to have found this because I have Act 1 and this completes the set for me. And if you don't know who David Mack is, he's probably better known for his work in Marvel because that's where he went later on in the 2000s, and specifically his work for Daredevil during the Bendis era. He co-created or created Echo. But anyways, this is about a underground secret society of assassins, kind of like John Wick, but much more deeper, much more psychological, and the violence is much more artsy-fartsy. Brian Boland's Black Book Number 1, published by Eclipse Comics back in 1985. So this is a horror anthology that reprints older stories Brian Boland worked on back in the late 70s. Way before he drew Judge Dredd or The Killing Joke, he was drawing some classy horror panels. And these stories originally ran in House of Hammer magazine over in the UK, across the pond as they would say. And oh yeah, it was absolutely licensed by Hammer Film Productions, the premier horror studio that produced some of the best British horror movies from the mid-50s through the 70s. Anyway, even though this is a little beat up, I'm glad I found it. Absolutely love Brian Boland, and if it has his name on it, I'm grabbing it. Destroyer Duck Number 2, published by Eclipse Comics, written by Steve Gerber, art by Jack Kirby. So Destroyer Duck was basically created to help Steve Gerber fund his legal battle with Marvel Comics over the ownership of Howard the Duck, one of the first highly publicized creator rights cases in the US. So it makes total sense that Jack Kirby jumped on board since he was a staunch advocate for creators' rights and going through his own fight with Marvel. And even though I've got a full run of Gerber's Howard the Duck, I've never read these, so I'm looking forward to all the jabs Gerber throws at Marvel. Cyberpunk Number 1, published by Innovation Comics back in 1989, written by Scott Rockwell with amazing art by Daryl Banks. So I had this one back in the day, found it in a quarter bin of course, and what drew me in originally was this paint-on-panel style. I mean, like I said before, it's my jam. But here's what didn't click with me the first time was that this was the same Daryl Banks who would go on to co-create Kyle Rayner and design Parallax. I mean, mind totally blown, especially as I was devouring Green Lantern at the time. But anyway, the story in itself is your typical cyberpunk fanfare that borrows a bit from William Gibson but still feels like a stylish preview of the deeper digital dystopias we'd see in the 90s. The Goon Number 13, published by Albatross Funny Books back in 2021, written and illustrated by Eric Powell, and it's a variant cover. So I'm a big fan of Eric Powell, but I've not kept up with The Goon in quite some time. I do have 4 out of the 5 library editions Dark Horse released, but I have no clue what's happened since then. But to give you a general summary, the Goon is a hard-boiled thug, but with a heart. He breaks faces in a twisted town full of monsters and mobsters, battling supernatural scumbags alongside his wisecracking pal Frankie, and that's all you really need to know. Cerebus 111, published by Aardvark Vanaheim back in 1988, written by Dave Sim, illustrated by Dave Sim and his longtime collaborator Gerhard. So I used to have quite a few issues of Cerebus back in the day, and I've always admired Dave Sim's tenacity. The dude is prolific as hell, and he's still out there making comics with zero help from the mainstream. That said, if I'm being honest, my favorite aspect of these books have always been the detailed backgrounds by Gerhard. But if you're curious about diving in, I'd recommend starting with the collected editions, specifically Volume 2 High Society and Volume 3 Church and State, which includes this issue. Blubber Number 2 and 4, published by Fantagraphics back in 2016, written and illustrated by Gilbert Hernandez from Love and Rockets fame. Yeah, had to censor most of the pages on these. They are wildly inappropriate. But hey, it's Gilbert Hernandez doing unfiltered off-the-rails cartooning, and I'm still a fan. But let's just say Blubber is not safe for work, filled with freaky creatures with ding-dongs, and a whole lot of what did I just read? Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children, number 3 and number 13, published by Prana Press back in 1989 and 1990. But let me show you this. This is Mr. Bungle's debut album, one of my favorites from the high school era. And Dan Sweetman, the illustrator for Beautiful Stories, he did that. It actually comes from a cotton candy autopsy. And it doesn't come from this specific chapter. I'm holding chapter 2. Chapter 1 was actually issue 1 of Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children. And then that Mr. Bungle image came from chapter 3, which was only available on a severely out-of-print trade paperback that collected the 2 stories and then added that final chapter. And boy, it took me some time to figure that out back in the day. But anyways, gotta give props to Mr. Bungle for getting me into a book like this, mostly prose by Dave Lupree, obviously Dark Twisted Tales and Dan Sweetman's artwork. But anyways, I think I'm gonna try to build the whole run. And there you have it. Phase 1 of our $60 sacred haul, featuring indie relics and miscellaneous oddities. This was the first step of our 3-part initiation. Next chapter, the DC Scrolls. And if the spirit of Will Eisner moved you, tap that like button and gently press subscribe to seal your place among the initiated.